whether or not you should consider upgrading. Obviously, in the tech media, we tend to talk about the newest phone, compared to the one that it immediately replaces. But most people in the real world don't buy a new phone every year. So chances are you're sitting on an iPhone 12 or iPhone 13, even iPhone 14 and 15. So let's not waste any time. We'll get straight into it with the iPhone 16. And this year, we have the closest to a redesign that the regular iPhone has seen. Since the iPhone 12, and of course, they rearranged the camera design. It kind of reminds me of the iPhone 10 in the best possible way. And the new colors are phenomenal. What's really important is under the hood. And I think the iPhone 16 is probably the more significant upgrade between the regular and the Pro series. For one, there's Apple Intelligence. Kind of wild that the one-year-old iPhone 15 doesn't get that. But apparently, it's because Apple Intelligence needs 8 gigabytes of RAM, which we now get with the other new thing. The A18 chip, the iPhone 16, is jumping the A17 generation, completely in favor of this new chip, which has a more powerful CPU and GPU as well as ray tracing. That's another big addition for the regular iPhone. And we're also getting some powerful hardware features. The action button is making its way down from the iPhone 15 Pro. And more importantly, the camera control option is not Pro exclusive. Typically, Apple has been introducing features only on the Pro models. Last year, it was the action button. The year before that, the dynamic island. But this year, camera control is coming to all 4 models. And I think that's a really good thing. The camera system on the iPhone 16 is also getting a pretty major upgrade. We still have the 48-megapixel main camera, but now Apple is calling this their Fusion camera, which basically combines a 48-megapixel and a 12-megapixel photo to get optimal detail and lighting and create a 24-megapixel photo. But honestly, the bigger upgrade is the ultra-wide camera, which now is the 12-megapixel sensor with autofocus. Ultra-wide cameras, so this is a pretty nice update for those of you who like the ultra-wide, which probably should be all of you, because the ultra-wide is fantastic. And that also means you can now do macro mode on the regular iPhone. Plus the new camera arrangement means you can now shoot spatial photos and videos on the regular iPhone. As well, also seems Apple's audio team have been hard at work, because they talked about this new feature for wind noise reduction on the iPhone 16, but what they didn't talk about was that the audio mix feature that they described for the 16 Pro is also coming to the regular iPhone 16. So that's just like a fun little tidbit that they didn't even talk about. So when you look at the iPhone 16 altogether, this is actually a really big update. I know a lot of people tend to look at the newest iPhone every single year and say, oh, they made the camera a little bit better and it's a new color and you know who actually cares. But when you dig down even compared to the iPhone 15, this is a big update. You're getting an improved main sensor. You're getting the ultra-wide camera passed down from the iPhone 15 Pro, which allows macro mode autofocus, better nighttime photography, spatial photos and videos. Plus, you're getting the increased efficiency of the A18 chip, a larger battery with several hours more battery life. You're getting Apple Intelligence. You're getting improved microphones and audio mixing. And you're getting the new camera control plus the action button. That's a pretty solid update overall. And I think if you have any regular iPhone and you looked at that, iPhone 16 in that beautiful new blue or that teal color, and you thought, But now let's shift gears to the iPhone 16 Pro. This is a little bit more of a complicated equation. Because in my opinion, from what I've distilled down to the actually important features, it's a little bit less of an upgrade than last year's iPhone 15 Pro was, in my opinion. However, I am still very excited for it, and I'll explain why. There's 4 main aspects of the iPhone 16 Pro that I think really sell it for me. Number 1 is the larger display with thinner bezels. That just kind of goes without saying. It looks better. You get a bit more screen real estate, and the device itself is barely any bigger. The second big feature is the camera control button. I'm extremely excited about that. We'll dive into that in a bit more detail in just a second. But the third thing is the ultra-wide camera. Being 48 megapixels, this is a massive upgrade in my opinion. I absolutely love the ultra-wide camera, but it has always been noticeably lower quality. So now we have a dual 48 megapixel sensor, which unlocks a bunch of really cool stuff. Higher quality macro photos, higher quality low light performance on that ultra-wide lens. But I am a little bit disappointed, because diving into Apple's spec sheet reveals that spatial video is still locked at 1080p, 30 FPS, and a lot of other people kind of assumed that if you're shooting with this dual 48 megapixel setup that maybe we could bump that up to 4K. But the fourth feature, and the one that I'm arguably the most excited about, as boring as it is battery life. Now we've heard rumors leading up to this event about a stacked battery design that Apple was supposedly going to implement, and they didn't talk about that directly. If you look at the keynote, it does seem like the battery has a metal enclosure, which we heard about in the rumors. But when talking about the actual improvements, they just said battery optimizations, larger batteries, advanced power management, and the remarkable efficiency of Apple Silicon provide fantastic battery life. What does that even really mean? But apparently the results speak for themselves, as the iPhone 16 Pro Max is boasting the longest battery life on any iPhone ever, or jumping from 29 to 33 hours of video playback, or also gaining 4 hours of stream video playback and 10 hours of audio playback. Now, obviously, real-world battery usage is going to be different, because I know absolutely zero people who get 29 hours of battery life on their iPhone 15 Pro Max, but as a percentage, these numbers are around 15% better. So would a 15% improvement in battery life be significant to you? But given that the iPhone 15 Pro Max was only rated 1 hour better than the 13 Pro Max, at the very bare minimum, we can expect that the year-over-year improvement in battery life is going to be something, literally something, anything please. But now let's talk cameras. This is a big one, and it's also a polarizing one. Because every time I talk about iPhone cameras, I know that people are going to say, well, I don't really care about that. But whether you only use your iPhones, Pro cameras for casual videos and photos, or if you're shooting a the weekend music video, this is actually a super-duper elegant feature, no one. This adds a ton of layers of control to the iPhone without cluttering up the screen. But thanks to Apple Intelligence, on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, we're also gaining effectively Google Lens with a dedicated button. I mean, let's be honest and call it what it is. You press and hold the camera control button, and it does a Google Lens scan of your surroundings. It looks super cool. The fact that you can make a calendar invite just by scanning a flyer, I like that feature. It's not anything new. But when you dive deeper into this camera system, you'll find it is absolutely off the rails. I love the fact that you can do 4K 120 FPS, Dolby Vision recording with Pro RAW support. That's nuts. And their new audio mix feature, which is also available on the iPhone 16. Looks super duper cool for when you want to film something semi-casually that you actually want to sound good. So when you compare the iPhone 16 to the 16 Pro, I think those models are remaining fairly distinct, despite the fact that they are sharing features more than they ever have. They now share the action button, camera control button, the 48 megapixel main camera, and Apple Intelligence compatibility. But despite those similarities, I think they're different enough that you can justify getting the 16 instead of the 16 Pro. And I know the gut reaction of a lot of people is going to be, well, or vice versa. You know, the rumors are that the iPhone 17 is the one to wait for. But I'll tell you what, last year, I remember that same conversation when people were talking about the iPhone 16 Ultra and how that's the one that you should wait for. And it kind of seems like every year now it's, oh, well, next year is going to be the super cycle. And I think we have to realize that the reality of the modern smartphone world is that the super cycle is dead as much as we, the consumer, love a generation of phone that is so good and so exciting and so different that it just causes this avalanche of people upgrading to it. Obviously, is still a pretty good one. Now, if you have an iPhone 15 Pro, do you need a 16 Pro? Well, maybe you want that 5x tetra prism zoom lens. Maybe you really like the new camera features in that 48 megapixel ultra-wide, in which case, sure, yeah, go for it. But if you're on an iPhone 11 Pro, 12 Pro, 13 Pro, I think there's a lot of meat on the bone this year that would really compel you to upgrade, if nothing else, just to get better battery life. Get on the bandwagon with the dynamic island and these new buttons. I think it's worth the upgrade, honestly. But of course, I'd love to hear what you guys think of all of this. So let me know in the comments below. If you found this year's updates to be exciting or boring,